What if your money started making money? And then that money made even more money. That's the power of compound interest, and it's why some people build wealth while others fall behind. Let's explore this in more detail on the FinTalk channel. This is not investment advice.
Imagine a mathematical force so powerful that it, literally built the greatest fortunes in human history.
Right.
But at the exact same time, it was considered so destructive by the Roman Empire that they actually passed laws to outlaw it entirely.
Yeah, which is just wild to think about today.
It really is. I mean, welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at a mechanism that operates totally invisibly in the background of almost every single decision you make. Whether you're swiping a credit card or signing a mortgage or just trying to figure out how to eventually retire.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
Right. And we have a really diverse stack of sources for you today to help us unpack this. We've got highly technical algebra and pre-calculus tutorials from the Organic Chemistry Tutor.
Which are fantastic, by the way. Very detailed.
Fair. And our mission today is to take this concept, which is famously dubbed the world's eighth wonder, and just dismantle it down to its studs.
I love that. Down to the studs.
Yeah, we want to break it down so simply and straightforwardly that, honestly, even if you have never looked at a bank statement in your life, you'll completely understand it. We are giving you the ultimate shortcut to understanding exactly how money behaves over time.
And, the stakes underlying this math are profound. I mean, this isn't just some boring accounting principle. It is a fundamental law of growth that governs capital.
Right.
The earliest traces of humanity wrestling with this concept actually go all the way back to ancient clay tablets in Babylon.
Wait, seriously? Babylon?
Yeah, Babylon. They recognized really early on that this force is basically a dual-edged sword. It's the engine of capital formation, but simultaneously, it's the architecture of inescapable financial ruin.
Wow. Okay, so to understand why a Babylonian scribe was carving this into clay nearly 4,000 years ago, we really need to define the battlefield first.
Absolutely.
In our sources, we basically have a structural conflict between two main concepts, right? Simple interest and compound interest.
Yeah, those are the two pillars, and the distinction really comes down to the treatment of the generated surplus.
Okay, the surplus. Break that down for me.
So simple interest is entirely linear. It's calculated exclusively on the principal amount, which is just the original sum of money you either invested or borrowed. The surplus, or the interest, is extracted. It doesn't get added back in.
Okay.
But compound interest fundamentally changes the math because it retains that surplus. The interest generated is folded right back into the principal. So you are calculating growth on the original sum plus all the previously accumulated growth.
Right. Okay, let's unpack this with an analogy because I want to make sure we're visualizing the actual, engine here.
Let's do it.
Think of like a biological population. Let's say you own a small farm and your principal, your starting money, is a starting population of cattle.
I like where this is going.
Simple interest is basically like selling off all the new calves every single year. You take the profit, sure, but your core breeding herd never actually gets any larger.
Right, the output is totally static.
Exactly. Like 50 cows produce a set number of calves this year, and they are going to produce the exact same number next year. It's just a straight flat line.
Which is, a highly predictable economic model, but ultimately a stagnant one.
Totally stagnant. But compound interest, in this analogy, is keeping the calves. You let them mature, and soon enough, those calves are having their own calves. The original herd is producing, the first generation is producing, the second generation is producing. You aren't just adding to the total number of cows, you're increasing the actual rate at which new calves are born.
Right.
The whole curve just bends upwards.
That biological mechanism captures the core of the mathematics perfectly. I mean, it is all about the accelerating rate of growth. Your surplus begins to generate its own surplus.
Yeah.
And the Turkish sources we reviewed, especially channels like Malumath, place a massive emphasis on this exact mechanic. They actually frame it not just as banking, but as finansal özgürlüğün matematiği, which translates to the mathematics of financial freedom.
Oh, I love that. The mathematics of financial freedom.
Right. And they constantly advocate starting from 0 TL, 0 Turkish lira.
Basically starting from nothing.
Exactly. To demonstrate that the initial size of the herd matters way less than the biological compounding effect over a long horizon.
Which makes total sense. I mean, if the rate of reproduction is compounding, a really small herd left alone for 30 years is going to vastly outnumber some massive herd where you just sell off the calves every season.
Absolutely. The math of the system does the heavy lifting, not the initial capital injection.
So you don't need to be rich to start.
No, not at all. The acceleration is what allows individuals to escape what those creators refer to as the rat race. The geometric expansion eventually just outpaces linear human labor.
Because you literally cannot work hard enough to beat a compounding curve once it really hits its stride.
You physically cannot. It's mathematically impossible.
Man, that sounds like an absolute miracle for building wealth.
It does, right?
But, and this is where it gets super interesting, reading through the historical encyclopedia entry in our sources, it becomes really clear that the ancient world viewed this miracle with deep suspicion.
Oh, extreme suspicion.
And often outright hostility. The historical record reveals a really violently controversial past for compound interest.
Well, the perspective entirely depends on who holds the capital and who owes it.
Right.
Like we mentioned, the first mathematical traces of compound interest show up on a Babylonian clay tablet dating between 2000 and 1700 BC.
Which is just mind-blowing.
It is. And the Babylonians were dealing with agrarian economies, right? Loans were often in the form of grain or silver, and they were trying to calculate how fast an unpaid debt would multiply if the owed interest was added back to the principal.
So they were doing the exact math on the calves. But in this case, the borrower owes the original herd, plus the new calves, plus the calves' calves.
Exactly. And this is exactly where the system breaks down socially. Because by the time we reach the Roman Empire, compound interest was severely condemned.
Like, legally condemned.
Yes. In Roman law, and eventually in the common laws of a lot of medieval countries, it was literally branded as the worst kind of usury.
But wait, if the underlying math is just a natural law of growth, like the cows breeding, why ban the math itself? Why not just, I don't know, cap the interest rates? Were they seeing a structural failure in the whole economy?
They were seeing systemic enslavement.
Enslavement, really?
Think about it. In an ancient agrarian economy, a farmer takes out a loan of grain to survive a bad harvest or maybe a drought.
Okay.
The farmer expects to pay it back with simple interest after a good harvest. And here's the catch. If the harvest fails again, the unpaid interest becomes part of the new principal. The debt is now compounding. Here is the structural failure. Agriculture grows linearly. It's subject to the constraints of land, weather, and physical labor. You can only grow so much grain on an acre of land.
Right. There's a hard physical limit.
But compound debt grows exponentially. It is subject only to the passage of time.
Oh, man. So the debt completely outpaces the physical reality of the farm.
Unavoidably. Even with a record-breaking harvest, the farmer can no longer generate enough surplus to cover that ballooning principal. The mathematical certainty of that curve means the farmer loses the land and, in the ancient world, often their actual freedom. They became debt slaves.
That is dark. That puts a very dark spin on the whole eighth wonder thing.
It does.
It's basically an engine that doesn't care what fuel you put into it. It just burns.
Exactly. The Roman condemnation was essentially a crude but necessary macroeconomic failsafe against a runaway mathematical formula. They recognized that an exponential debt curve inside a linear agrarian economy eventually just devours everything.
Wow. But, I mean, you can't suppress mathematics forever, right? The sources show that by the Renaissance, the huge expansion of global trade essentially forced compound interest out of the shadows.
Yeah, commerce demands capital, and capital demands a return on risk. You can't fund global trade without it. So in 1340, a Florentine merchant named Francesco Balducci Pegolotti published a manuscript called Pratica della Mercatura.
Which was like a comprehensive guide to international trade?
Right. And inside this guide, he included a massive pre-calculated table for compound interest.
Like a cheat sheet.
Exactly. He mapped out the growth of 100 lire at rates from 1% to 8%, projecting it all the way out for up to 20 years.
I just want to pause and consider the, computational friction of the 14th century here.
Oh, it was a nightmare.
Right. A merchant trying to calculate compound interest for a 20-year loan using early Arabic numerals, or even worse, Roman numerals. That's a massive barrier.
Yeah, Pegolotti essentially published a medieval computational engine. He did all the grueling arithmetic once so that the entire merchant class of Florence could simply reference his grid.
It standardized this invisible force.
It did.
And the sources point to an even bigger milestone in 1613. There was an Englishman named Richard Witt who published a book called Arithmetical Questions. And it was entirely devoted to compound interest, which, fun fact, the book referred to under this archaic term, anatocism.
Anatocism, yes.
Yeah.
And the publication of Witt's book is actually a really fascinating economic signal. Prior to 1613, mathematicians might relegate anatocism to a brief appendix at the back of an algebra textbook.
Just a footnote, basically.
Right. But Witt built an entire volume around it. It contained 124 worked examples of compound interest calculations.
Okay, so I actually noticed a very specific detail in the sources regarding Witt's book.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, all of his 124 examples utilized a 10% interest rate. And the reason was that 10% was the absolute maximum allowable rate for loans in London at the time.
Right, a legal cap.
So if the government was imposing a strict 10% cap, doesn't that suggest they still viewed compounding as inherently dangerous? Like, they were trying to harness the engine, but they were keeping a really heavy foot on the brakes.
That's a brilliant way to put it.
Mm.
The cap was an acknowledgement of the tension between capital formation and social stability. Early modern London was transitioning into this highly financialized hub. They needed compound interest to fund voyages, build infrastructure, and scale manufacturing.
They needed the engine.
They did, but the ghost of that Roman agrarian debt trap was still there. The 10% cap was a legislative attempt to ensure the exponential curve didn't steepen so aggressively that it just collapsed the whole borrowing class.
Okay, so to really grasp the velocity of that curve, like why a 10% cap was even necessary and why Pegalotti had to build those massive tables, we need to dive into the actual math.
We need to look under the hood.
Exactly. And don't worry, we're going to make this super painless.
Very painless.
The most elegant entry point into this math is a mental shortcut that predates modern calculus. Our sources highlight the contribution of Luca Pacioli, a mathematician who published Summa de Arithmetica in 1494.
Yes.
He formalized what we now call the Rule of 72.
I love the Rule of 72. It's brilliant because it completely removes the intimidation factor.
Completely.
If you want to know exactly how fast your money or your debt is going to double, you don't need a spreadsheet. You just take the number 72 and divide it by your interest rate.
Okay, so give me an example.
So if you are earning an 8% return, 72 divided by 8 is 9. It'll take exactly 9 years for your principal to double.
Okay, wow, that's easy. And if the rate is, say, 12%?
72 divided by 12 is 6. Your capital doubles in 6 years. It just provides this immediate visceral understanding of the compounding velocity.
But wait, why 72?
What do you mean?
I mean, why not 70 or 75? If we are talking about rigid, universal mathematical laws, 72 seems kind of arbitrary, doesn't it? Okay. It is actually a pragmatic compromise. The actual mathematical constant required to calculate doubling time involves the natural logarithm of 2, which is approximately 0.693.
Okay, 0.693.
Right. So if you wanted the most precise answer possible, you would use a rule of 69.3.
But 69.3 is terrible for mental math.
Exactly. It's awful.
No.
Pacioli and the early merchants realized that 72 is incredibly close to the true logarithmic value, and mathematically, 72 is a highly composite number.
Meaning it divides cleanly by a lot of things.
Right. It divides cleanly by 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 9, and 12. It trades a microscopic fraction of precision for just immense practical utility on a trading floor or, a chaotic dock
It's
site.
basically a 15th century life hack.
Exactly.
But I mean, a heuristic only gets you so far, right?
Right.
When we transition into the highly technical tutorials provided by the organic chemistry tutor, we hit the core periodic compounding formula. This is the actual engine blueprint.
Let's hear it.
Okay, the formula is A equals P times the quantity of 1 plus R over N raised to the power of N times T. Yes. AOA P plus RN and T.
Let's walk through the mechanics of this equation for everyone listening.
The variables define the entire landscape here. A represents the accumulated amount, the total future value of the money.
The final pile of money.
Right. P is the principal, your starting seed capital.
Yeah.
R is the annual interest rate, expressed as a decimal. And T is time, the number of years the money is invested.
Okay, up to that point, it's fairly intuitive. You take your money, multiply it by the rate, and run it across time. But there's one variable in there that completely changes the physics of this equation.
The N.
The N.
The N variable represents compounding frequency. This is the number of times per year the bank or financial institution actually stops, calculates the generated interest, and officially adds it to your principal balance.
Okay, let's bring back our biological farm analogy to explain in, because this is where the math gets truly wild for me.
Let's do it.
So, P is your starting herd of 1,000 cattle. A is the biological fertility rate, let's just say 20%. E is the number of years. In this analogy, N is the number of breeding seasons per year.
That is a perfect translation of the mechanics.
Right. So if N is 1, you have 1 breeding season a year. You start with 1,000 cattle. At the end of the year, a 20% growth rate yields 200 calves. You now have 1,200 cattle.
Simple enough.
But if N is 2, the math shifts. The cattle breed twice a year. The 20% annual rate is chopped in half, so you get 10% growth per season.
Right. So in the first 6 months, your 1,000 cattle grow by 10%. You get 100 calves. Your herd is now 1,100.
But here is the critical mechanical shift. In the second 6 months, those new 100 calves are now part of the base population. When the second breeding season hits, you calculate 10% growth on 1,100 cattle, you get 110 calves.
Not just 100.
Exactly. At the end of the year, you don't have 1,200 cattle, you have 1,210. The mere act of increasing the frequency of the cycle generated an extra 10 units of wealth, without changing the starting capital or the annual rate at all.
Now follow that logic as N increases. What if N is 4? Quarterly compounding, the bank calculates the interest every 3 months.
Or monthly compounding, where N is 12. The new money is folded back in every 30 days, instantly becoming part of the engine.
We can map this with a really rigid financial example from the sources. Consider a $1,000 principal at a 20% annual interest rate for 1 year. As you noted, yearly compounding, where N equals 1, yields $1,200.
Right.
But if the bank compounds quarterly, N equals 4, the final amount is $12,215.51.
Okay, an extra $15.
If they compound monthly, where N equals 12, it rises to $1,219.39. And if they compound daily, where N equals 365, literally calculating the fraction of interest every single night at midnight and adding it to your balance, the final amount reaches $1,230.21.
So every single time you chop the year into smaller, more frequent pieces, the final output gets larger.
Yes.
The compounding accelerates because the interest is put to work faster.
The acceleration is undeniable.
Yeah.
The more frequently the cycle repeats, the steeper the curve.
Okay, but this leads to an inevitable, almost dangerous question in my mind.
Which is?
If increasing N from 1 to 365 gives me more money, why stop there? What if I demand my bank compound my interest every hour, or every minute, every millisecond? If we push in toward infinity, if the cattle are breeding continuously in real time without ever stopping, does the money become infinite? Do I just break reality?
That specific question is actually one of the most important theoretical inquiries in all of mathematical history.
Really?
Oh, yeah. In 1683, a Swiss mathematician named Jacob Bernoulli set out to solve exactly that. He wasn't looking at banking regulations or anything. He was trying to find the mathematical limit of the compounding period.
Okay, let's break down Bernoulli's thought experiment because it's fascinating. He imagined the simplest possible scenario, a principal of $1 at an interest rate of 100% for exactly 1 year.
Right, so if compounded yearly, the formula is 1 plus 1 over 1 to the power of 1, which equals 2. Your $1 becomes $2.
If compounded semi-annually, N is 2, the formula is 1 plus 1 over 2 squared. That equals 2.25. You make $2.25.
Monthly N is 12.
Okay.
1 plus 1 over 12 to the power of 12. That equals approximately 2.61.
Daily N is 365. The output is about 2.71. Wait, it's slowing down.
And that deceleration is the massive discovery.
Oh.
Bernoulli proved that as N approaches infinity, as the compounding becomes absolutely continuous, breaking time down into infinitely small fractions, the total return does not shoot to infinity. It hits a hard mathematical ceiling.
It doesn't break reality.
No. The sequence converges on an irrational number, 2.7182818, extending forever.
And that number is E, Euler's number.
Exactly.
One of the fundamental constants of the universe, right alongside pi. It governs the spiral of a nautilus shell, the decay of a radioactive isotope, and the biological growth of bacteria. And you're telling me it was discovered purely because Bernoulli wanted to know the absolute limit of compounding capital?
Yes. Purely because of compound interest. The convergence reveals this profound truth about exponential growth in nature and finance. There is a structural limit to continuous replication over a fixed period of time.
Wow.
And when we apply this to finance, the clunky periodic formula we discussed earlier is discarded entirely. If an asset compounds continuously, the formula simplifies into incredible elegance. P, as a function of t, equals P0 times E raised to the power of FERT.
Wait, P0 is your starting money, right? Multiplied by E raised to the power of the rate times time.
Yes.
The N variable is completely gone.
Completely gone, because time is no longer chopped into discrete chunks. It is a smooth, continuous flow.
That is beautiful. But okay, in this continuous model, the interest rate arb sort of takes on a new identity, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The sources refer to it as the force of interest, which sounds very sci-fi.
It does. It's represented by the Greek letter delta. Mathematically, the force of interest is the logarithmic derivative of the accumulation function. To find it, you simply take the natural logarithm of 1 plus the periodic rate. Delta equals ln of 1 plus r.
Okay, I have to push back here for a second.
Sure, go ahead.
Continuous compounding is mathematically beautiful. I get it. But it feels entirely academic. I mean, my savings account pays me monthly. My credit card charges me daily. Nobody is actually compounding money continuously at the consumer level. So does this equation have any real-world utility? Or is it just a theoretical playground for math nerds?
That is a very fair question. But the answer is yes. It has massive utility. It governs the highest tiers of global finance.
Oh, really?
You are correct that retail banking operates on discrete periods, months, and days. But when you move into institutional finance, specifically the valuation of complex derivatives and options, discrete time breaks down. The stock market doesn't reprice risk once a day. It prices risk tick by tick in real time.
Ah, so the giant institutional trading algorithms are using E.
Absolutely. The Black-Scholes model, which is the foundational equation for pricing options contracts, relies entirely on continuous compounding. To price an option, financial engineers use a branch of mathematics called Ito calculus.
Wait, how does Ito calculus utilize this continuous force? Keep it simple for me.
Okay, so traditional calculus deals with smooth, predictable curves. But financial markets are subjected to random shocks, what mathematicians call Brownian motion.
Like completely unpredictable jumps.
Right. Ito calculus provides a framework to integrate this randomness over continuous time. When pricing a derivative, treating time as a smooth, continuous fluid flow utilizing Ian is mathematically far more robust than trying to calculate millions of jagged, discrete jumps.
Okay, that makes sense.
Furthermore, macroeconomists use a variant of this continuous math, known as Stidley's formula, to model the force of inflation.
Oh, inflation.
Yeah, they treat the erosion of purchasing power not as a yearly event, but as a continuously compounding force of decay acting on the currency every second of every day.
Man, that reframes the entire concept. The math driving the universe's biological growth is the exact same math utilized by a Wall Street supercomputer to price a derivative at a microsecond level and to measure how fast your money is losing value in your wallet. It's literally an omnipresent force.
It is. And just as we observed with the Romans, this force does not possess a moral compass.
Right.
When continuous or highly frequent compounding is applied to an asset you own, it is the engine of wealth. But when it is applied to a liability you owe, it becomes an inescapable gravitational pull.
And the Turkish YouTube creators use a very specific, visceral phrase for this. They talk about compound interest working aleyhamize.
Aleyhamize, yes.
It means against us.
Mhm.
When the eighth wonder works against us, it manifests as consumer debt, student loans, and most significantly, the modern mortgage.
The mortgage is a masterclass in how financial institutions structure mathematical formulas to manage their own risk while maximizing the borrower's burden. If we analyze how a standard U.S. mortgage functions, we see a heavy modification of the compounding principles we've just discussed.
Right, because most people just assume a mortgage is a massive pile of money sitting there, compounding against them daily like a giant credit card.
It is much more calculated than that. In the United States, most mortgages utilize an amortizing loan structure.
Amortizing.
Right. The critical mechanism of an amortizing loan is that the interest generated each month is not added to the principal to create a compounding snowball.
Oh, really?
No. Instead, an amortization schedule dictates a fixed monthly payment that forces you to pay off that month's interest immediately, with whatever is left over going toward reducing the principal.
Okay, let's look at the mechanics of that. If I take out a 30-year mortgage, in the first few years, the principal is at its absolute largest. Therefore, the mathematical interest generated in month one is massive.
Precisely. In the early years of the amortization schedule, your fixed monthly payment is almost entirely consumed by the interest. The portion of the payment that actually attacks the principal, the core debt, is minuscule. You're essentially paying rent on the borrowed money.
So the bank front-loads the interest extraction to secure their return on capital as quickly as possible.
Exactly.
So the bank ensures they get the surplus first before I am allowed to actually pay down the house.
That's the design.
What about international variations? Because our sources mentioned the Canadian mortgage system operates on a different structural logic.
Yes, Canadian mortgage loans introduce a fascinating mathematical mismatch. By law, they are generally compounded semi-annually.
So the N variable is 2.
Correct. However, the borrower makes payments monthly, or even biweekly.
Wait, if the bank only officially calculates the compound interest twice a year, but I am handing them money every single month, how does the math even align?
It requires calculating a specific effective monthly rate derived from the semi-annual nominal rate. The financial institution basically has to solve a complex equivalence equation to ensure the monthly payments exactly amortize the semi-annually compounding principal over the life of the loan.
That sounds confusing.
It creates a huge layer of mathematical opacity for the consumer.
Yeah, and today, a bank's computer solves that opacity in a millisecond using an Excel PMT function. But this begs a historical question for me. Amortizing loans and complex mortgages aren't new. How did humanity handle this before microchips?
Yes.
If the exact formula for monthly payment is as brutal as it looks, how did early merchants manage it?
The sources provide a stunning historical solution to this exact problem. The true formula for a monthly payment on an amortizing loan is incredibly complex. Let C equal the monthly payment, P equal the principal, R equal the monthly interest rate, and N equal the total number of payment periods.
Okay, I'm with you.
The formula is C equals the quantity of R times P divided by the quantity of 1 minus, open parenthesis, 1 plus R, close parenthesis, to the negative N power.
Oh my God, just look at the denominator of that equation. 1 minus 1 plus r to the negative n, a negative exponent. Nobody is calculating a negative exponential function in their head while standing in a busy 19th century bazaar.
It is computationally impossible without tools. But Persian merchants from the 19th century, and likely much earlier, engineered a mental workaround. They utilized a mathematical concept known as a Taylor series approximation.
Okay, let's carefully break down how a Taylor series actually works, because it sounds like advanced theoretical calculus, yet these merchants were using it in the street.
It is calculus. At its core, a Taylor series is a tool from calculus used to take a complex, curvy function like an exponential curve and approximate it using simple straight lines, provided you stay close to a specific point of reference.
Okay, so imagine zooming in closely enough on a curved line until it visually appears flat.
Exactly. You can substitute the complex equation of the curve with a simple linear equation.
They flatten the math.
They did. The merchants looked at that impossible denominator, 1 minus the quantity of 1 plus r to the negative n. They knew that for standard, relatively small interest rates, the expression 1 plus r to the negative n can be approximated by just 1 minus nr.
That's a linear approximation.
Yes. So they substituted that back into the denominator. The denominator becomes 1 minus the quantity of 1 minus nr. The ones cancel out, and the negatives cancel out, leaving just a nr.
Oh, wow. The brutal exponential math just vanishes.
It does. The formula simplifies from that monstrous equation down to just C equals R times P divided by nr.
Wait, their r's cancel out too.
They do. You are left with P over N, principal divided by the number of periods.
Hold on, wait. P over N is just dividing the total loan evenly by the months. That completely ignores the interest.
Correct. P over N gives you the base principal payment. But the merchants weren't done. They knew they had to add the interest back in. Because the principal decreases linearly over time in their approximated model, the average outstanding principal over the life of the loan is roughly half the initial amount, plus a small adjustment.
Okay.
So they calculated the base payment, P over N, and mentally added an average interest charge of roughly P times R times the quantity of N plus 1 divided by 2. By combining these two simple arithmetic steps, just division and basic multiplication, they achieved a monthly payment figure that was remarkably accurate, usually within a few tenths of a % of the true exponential formula.
That is profound. They used the underlying logic of calculus to hack an exponential formula into basic arithmetic they could literally do in their heads. They understood the mechanics of the enemy well enough to dismantle it.
Which brings us to the ultimate strategic pivot. The Persian merchants hacked the math to survive the market. Today, the institutions hold the computational high ground. They use the exact, unapproximated formulas to structure debt perfectly.
Right.
So how does the modern individual navigate this landscape? How do you use these exact same mechanics to protect and compound your own capital?
The first layer of defense in the modern world is regulatory. It's about forcing the institutions to show you the true math. And that revolves around understanding AER, or APY.
Annual equivalent rate, or annual percentage yield.
Yeah.
This is a critical consumer protection metric.
We talked earlier about NLARA, the compounding frequency. We saw how a 20% rate compounding daily makes more money than a 20% rate compounding yearly.
Right.
Financial institutions obviously know this, and historically, They used it to manipulate the perceived cost of debt or the yield of an investment.
Yes, consider a corporate bond. A
Okay.
company might advertise a bond with a nominal interest rate of 5%, but the fine print dictates that the bond pays out interest semi-annually. Because of that mid-year compounding event, the actual effective return over a full 12 months is mathematically higher than 5%.
Okay, but on the flip side, a credit card company might advertise an 18% annual rate, but they compound the interest on your unpaid balance daily, so the effective rate, the true velocity of the debt, is significantly higher than 18%.
Exactly. And this asymmetry is why governments step in. Regulations mandate that financial products boldly disclose the AER or APY.
It forces transparency.
It does. The AER forces the institution to run their specific nominal rate through the compounding frequency formula and output a single, standardized, yearly equivalent rate. It assumes all interest is reinvested over a single year.
Got it.
It basically neutralizes the end variable, allowing a consumer to accurately compare a bond that compounds semi-annually against a savings account that compounds monthly.
It strips away the illusion of frequency.
Yes.
But understanding the true rate is only defensive.
Yeah.
To go on the offensive, to actually build the orchard that the Turkish YouTubers advocate for, we have to look at how capital is realistically accumulated in the real world.
Right, because the reality is that very few individuals possess a massive lump sum of capital to inject into the compounding formula at year zero. Most wealth is built through income streams.
Right. You aren't dropping $50,000 into an account and walking away. You are carving out $200 from every paycheck month after month.
And mathematically, this transforms the simple compound interest formula into a far more powerful structure known as a geometric series.
Okay, let's map out the mechanics of a geometric series. Because when you make a recurring monthly deposit, you aren't just adding to a single pile. You are launching a new, independent compounding timeline every single month.
That is exactly the right visualization. Your January deposit of $200 enters the market. It now has 12 months to compound over the year. Your February deposit of $200 enters the market, but it only has 11 months to compound. Your March deposit has 10 months. The mathematical formula required to calculate your total future value has to sum up all of these individual staggered timelines.
It's adding an exponential function to an exponential function to an exponential function.
The resulting accumulation function is staggeringly powerful. It is the mathematical engine behind every successful retirement account. To truly lock in the sheer scale of this force for you, let's analyze two deeply contrasting 40-year scenarios derived from the logic in our sources.
Okay, 40 years, which represents a standard working career. So, in scenario A, we look at a linear, non-compounding investment. You take a $10,000 initial investment and place it in an asset that yields a simple 1.5% annual dividend. The critical flaw in this scenario is behavioral. You do not reinvest the surplus every time the dividend pays out. You take the cash and you consume it.
You are selling the calf.
Precisely. You're selling the calves. Over 40 years, your $10,000 base remains exactly $10,000. You receive your 1.5% dividend every year. The sources point to historical market datasets showing that a basket of similar non-reinvested dividend yields over a 40-year span might generate roughly $266,864 in total extracted payments.
It is a linear accumulation of capital. It requires time, but it's not leverage time.
Okay, now let's contrast the mechanics of Scenario B. In Scenario B, you secure an investment that achieves a compounded 15% return over those same 40 years.
Okay.
The behavioral shift here is total.
Yeah.
You do not extract a single dollar. Every dividend, every capital gain is aggressively reinvested back into the principal. You are planting every single seed.
The underlying math here is the periodic formula. 10,000 times the quantity of 1 plus 0.15 to the power of 40.
You leave it alone for 4 decades. The final output isn't $266,000. It is over $2.6 million.
A single $10,000 injection transforms into a multi-million-dollar estate simply because the surplus was allowed to bend the curve.
The disparity between Scenario A and Scenario B reveals the true architect of the outcome. We spend so much time agonizing over the interest rate, hunting for a 15% return versus an 8% return.
Right.
And while the rate is important, the math clearly shows that the ultimate lever, the variable that truly dictates the terminal velocity of the wealth, is T.
Time. Time is the exponent. In an exponential equation, the variable located in the exponent mathematically dominates the base. The accumulation function relies entirely on t to achieve the aggressive vertical climb at the very end of the curve.
This is why the financial models consistently prove that an individual who begins investing a very small geometric series of deposits at age 20 will almost always mathematically crush an individual who invests massively larger sums starting at age 40.
Yes.
The 40-year-old has more capital, but the 20-year-old controls the exponent.
The math proves that you cannot easily earn your way out of a deficit of time.
So we have traversed an immense landscape today. We started with Babylonian scribes attempting to calculate the runaway velocity of agrarian debt on clay tablets.
We witnessed the Roman Empire use brute legal force to outlaw the math to protect their citizens from systemic enslavement.
We saw the mathematical evolution accelerate through the Renaissance with Pagalotti's massive computational tables and the early modern attempts to regulate the velocity with Richard Witt's 10% caps.
Right, and we looked under the hood of the formula itself, tracking how increasing the compounding frequency and artificially generates wealth, leading Jacob Bernoulli to chase the equation to infinity and accidentally discover the mathematical constant of natural growth.
We decoded how institutions utilize these exact formulas to construct amortizing mortgages that front-load interest extraction, and how Persian street merchants fought back by using Taylor series approximations to collapse exponential calculus into basic mental arithmetic.
And finally, we dismantled the modern landscape. We saw how AER regulations force transparency, how geometric series drive retirement wealth, and how the behavior of reinvesting surplus dictates whether you end up with $200,000 or $2 million.
Which leaves us with a necessary and perhaps uncomfortable conclusion to draw from all of this data. If the mathematics dictates that the variable t, time, situated in the exponent of the formula is the absolute sovereign driver of exponential growth, then our societal definitions of wealth are fundamentally misaligned.
How so?
We categorize our wealth by our income, or our liquid bank balance, or our property assets. But if you accept the mechanics of the eighth wonder, your greatest financial asset isn't your income. It isn't your credit score.
It is simply the raw amount of time you have left to deploy.
Exactly that. Every single day, your tense variable is ticking down. It is a strictly finite resource.
Right.
The ultimate question the math demands you answer is, who is benefiting from the time you have remaining? Are you diligently planting seeds, utilizing a geometric series to ensure your own orchard compounds over your timeline?
Or are you carrying debt, effectively allowing a financial institution to harness your tent to compound their own capital?
Are you leveraging the mathematics of time, or are you the fuel for someone else's equation? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this exploration into the mechanics of the eighth wonder has provided you with a completely new framework for how you view your money, your debt, and above all, your time. Keep challenging the formulas and stay insanely curious.